Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Today I'm talking to a lady about the language that we speak, or the language we think we speak, because in my journey of enlightenment, I have discovered that the words that we read and the words that we say may not be the same language that we think, that hidden within those words are different words with different meanings, and that we can be contracted or have our jurisdiction nabbed away from us in some nefarious way. So we've got to be alert, ladies and gentlemen. We certainly have. So all the way from up north somewhere, and anywhere above the South Downs is up north as far as I'm concerned, but really up north, from Dark Matters, I have on the line for you Carly Spell. Hello, Carly. How are you?
Hi, Richard. I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, whereabouts are you? I said up north, and you really are north from where I am.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that, really. Anything past Birmingham is extremely confusing. I'm originally from Bolton, but I'm actually based in North Wales at the moment. So, yeah, it's beautiful here, rolling hills and whatnot. Can't say the same. Bolton has some rolling hills, but yeah, that's the accent, the
Oh,
Boltonian. But yeah, North
right.
Walian.
Okay. So not quite so. So North Wales is very lovely. I know a number of people in our movement who are in Wales and North Wales, and I know Wales is one of those places you get a lot of weather.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Bolton's the same, really. They call it Bolton comes, and this will tie in with the language where we're going to go. Bolton is Bowl Town, and it actually has its own little microclimate. So Bolton comes from Bowl Town, and well, my surname is Haslam, and that actually the etymology of that is hazel tree, and the Irish settlers used to settle by the hazel trees, and the hazel tree is what the Druids used to make the staffs out of. So yeah, the Haslam is a big Bolton name. So you get Haslam Hospital, Haslam Park, Haslam, yeah, Haslam Hall. So again, it's all in the decode of our words and where we've come from, and it leads us back further, yeah, to where we've come from. But in simple terms, I'm a bird from Bolton. Aye.
Fabulous. Well, Bird from Bolton. Let's talk about words then, because now you recommended a book. I've got it here, which I have actually now read, Word Magic, and it talks about the hidden meaning of some of the words that we say. And it's interesting because sometimes I've heard this before, and I thought, oh, come on, you're pushing it a bit there, aren't you, on some of these words? So explain why I might be wrong on all of that, because some of the words that we use, we don't really, I mean, half the time we don't understand the etymology of them, where they've come from, and also that can be quite vague. And then the fact that there are words within words, or one dictionary, like say Black Law's dictionary, differs so much from, say, the Oxford English Dictionary.
Yeah.
So where do we start with this, Carly?
Yeah, so etymology, I suppose we've got to look to the root of the word, and that's what etymology does. So,
Mm.
English language in itself is a construct, and anything that's a anything with con at the beginning of it, the clue's in the title. So, this is where you'll get confidence or confine or contract, which is a big one, obviously, in law and legal. So when we look to the etymology and the root of the words, it tends to come from the Greek or the Latin, or it can kind of come from High German, depending on what it is and how we kind of decode it and break it down. I mean, it's a passion of mine that started really when I've been doing for the last 4 years since the understanding legalese. So just so we don't have to beep anything out,
So
I'm
yeah,
gonna
so
try and use my
we can say.
use my
I think we're allowed to
Are
say
we allowed to say
pandemic.
that?
I've said it now, so there we go. It's my fault if
Oh,
anything
good,
happens,
you've done it.
but I've done it.
And
But
because
I
I
often
run
no go on.
no, I was just saying because I run Dark Matters from a private network, I tend to get a little bit of a free flow, even though we
Mm.
do the podcasts that go on YouTube. But certainly, I've learned from you, Richard, that we have to disguise certain things that we say,
Certain
like
things, and
Corona.
I mean that, and that's absurd in itself, isn't it? That you're
Yeah,
having to manipulate your own language, so you might refer to something that came in. I often now call it a syringe of hope, although it may
yeah,
not have been very hopeful, and a medical intervention. and most people now know what you mean. And I think words, language is a fascinating thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that book that you've got there by Pao Chang, and it's called Word Magic because
Mm.
words are actually literal spells. This is where we get the word spelling from. This is why language is cursive, because it's a curse, and it's also when we speak it's a bond as well. So we can kind of take words to their roots. We also have a thing called word splitting. You can get word play, which is anagrams, like you rightly said then, Richard. You can get, say, like the word parliament. Well, parley means to talk and men's is the mind, and it's got a lie in it. So they say it's taught lies to the mind. And you might be saying that, it's a bit of a stretch, but when you kind of understand language and you decode it and study it to the nth degree, and I'm sure there's people who do it far greater than I. It does have a mathematical code as well. The English language, like I said, is a construct. We would have developed English language from other languages, more historical languages, say like Hebrew. So the English language is phonetically the direct opposite of Hebrew. And the English language has vowels, which is A, E, I, or U, which the Hebrew language doesn't. And A, E, I, or U was a demigod from ancient Babylon. So when we get into a lot of the language, we can realize it's a lot of Babylonian worship ultimately. And they actually call the language of legalese, like I say, it looks like English, might write like English, but it certainly isn't. They call it Babel or Babylon. So it has, as you say, in Black's law, and black in legalese means coloured, and coloured means counterfeit in legalese. So it's a counterfeit language, and we're casting these spells and curses and contracts upon each other without really understanding the true kind of meaning and natures of the words. So again, colorable, anything to do with black, and it is a black spell and a black magic, is a counterfeit language. And it also has a mathematical interface language, so we can kind of, the zero ones of language, and the numbers that mark up to the letters. And that's a study called gematria, and the beat goes on and on and on. And yeah, it's endless, but it's kind of beautiful, especially in its darkness. But as we kind of decode that darkness, ultimately we shine light upon it. And certainly in scripture, and scripture, the Bible was the first technical legal document, and this is why we utilize it in the legal system. Then when we decode the script and we decode the language, and we know that everything has a numerical value, then we can kind of begin, the zero ones start to fall down. We can decode the matrix itself.
When you said that the language, that words, we spell words, at first it takes a bit of a leap when you think, yes, spelling, but that's all about, getting the characters in the right order. But it's more than that, it's actually casting a spell. That sounds very esoteric, doesn't it? And is that literally what you mean, that we are casting into the universe certain words that are, I suppose, giving some form of vibration and then create having cause and effect?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because we know that words have a frequency, and in the beginning in scripture, and I should say as well, I'm not into organized religion. Religion again comes from the Latin religiere, which means to hold back, to thwart, to bind, to box in, because what these elites are doing and these control mechanisms are boxing us into time, but without kind of going into that. So really, everything has a frequency, and so do words. So when we speak, we spell, and this is science, if we look into kind of the study of cymatics. And like I say, in scripture, and scripture is your script, again, switch it round. It's not meant to be read literally. It's allegory and parable. It has a code to it, and it says, and in the beginning was the word. So, at first there was the thought, and then it was spoken into existence. So again, if we want to create, we know that, matter isn't kind of, it's all energy condensed to a slow vibration, and that's what we're in. So, and that has a frequency, so does language, so do words. So we are literally kind of, we're spelling as we speak.
Right.
because it's our consciousness that creates reality rather than the other way around. And like the double slit experiment of, quantum mechanics has shown and proven this, with the wave function and the observer. So again, this is something as wacky as it might sound and as far-fetched as it might be, when we start to pull the proverbial thread and tie all this in together, then we can start to see, the walls kind of come tumbling down, as I say. It's a castle built on sand, the English language.
It's interesting. I interviewed a philosopher chap who written a book called "The Bug in Our Thinking," and one of the questions he asks in that, right at the beginning, is what is a word? And he sort of gives you. He says, take a moment to think about what a word is, and then you're sitting there going, okay, it's a number of letters, or it's bits of the alphabet. And he says, did you come up with it's a sound? Because before writing, obviously words were spoken, just as you just so rightly said. So the spoken word is not just, once it's written down, it's kind of dead. But when it's spoken, it's out there causing that vibration that you speak. The thing that sort of baffles me is someone, or a number of people, presumably at some time, had to think this very complex way of producing the language so that you can split words apart, or that the words are making the right vibrations to create whatever it is. Is that what happened?
Well, it was the Phoenicians that language kind of came from. That's where we get the word phonetic, and that's where we get the word phony. And the Phoenicians were the great merchants of the sea, and that stemmed from Canaanite language. So if you're getting back into, again, in the beginning was the word, and turn that round, it's DNA, and it goes back to our origins and the origins also of language. So the English language, as it says in word magic, you break that word language down. Langu age means the monsters of war that protect the noble ones. So again, when we're talking about that, these were the merchants of the sea from Canaan. Now, Canaan is Baal worship, which is where you get the word Cana Baal, and you get obviously, Old Khazaria, for example, is now the Ukraine. And old Khazaria were the slave traders of old. They were the Slavic countries. And this is where, the original story of Cain and Abel, where Cain was to till the land because he slew Abel, where Abel was the shepherd. So the shepherd is where you want to be. You want to be a shepherd of men, but to till the land is in commerce. So again, it goes back to the Phoenicians being merchants of the sea, which then links into, maritime jurisdiction. Canada, it means I am Canaan. Uh, like I say, the Ukraine is Canaan itself. So again, when we break all these words down and we go back to our origins, when we go back to our genetics, and again, Genesis in scripture, it means genetics, then we can start to see how we've been hoodwinked really, and we've had the wool pulled over our eyes. Even take California. Well, Kali, fornication. This is, the goddess Kali, because if you kind of look at the Vatican, that, all roads lead to Rome. So again, it all goes back to this maritime, Baal, Moloch worship, without kind of getting too heavy, If we don't say Satan at least one day, but it will all link in. And this the Vatican worship the dog star of Sirius. Now, if you take the dog star of Sirius, this lines up with something called the I can never say it, the Göbekli Tepe, which is one of the oldest temples in the world. And this is about, the Vatican are worshipping, again, it's maritime language, the worshipping Babylonian deities. So the language of the Babel, or, like I said, language means the monsters of war that protect the noble ones, because language has been created, as in the Tower of Babel, to divide and separate us. So, I believe, whether this is true or not, before we were kind of enslaved thousands of years ago, we perhaps would have been using our consciousness to speak to one another, rather kind of almost telepathically. Now, the Tower of Babel is about giving the people all kinds of different languages and scattering them across the earth. So we were, divided again before we could kind of declare ourselves as gods. So again, it's all in the symbolism in the language. So you take the Pope that wears the mitre, the hat, Richard, that the Pope wears.
Oh
So
yes,
again,
yes.
yeah, it's called a mitre, and it's the shape of a fish, and it's a fish because they're worshipping a Babylonian deity called Dagon, right? So Dagon then goes to dragon, to the word dragon, which then goes to Draco or Dracul, which then means Dracula, which then means the blood of the serpent. Now again, you take the Welsh flag. I'm in Wales. I don't want to upset any Welsh people. But the red flag on, that the Welsh are, we all like to flap about, with real pride. Well, that goes back to the red flag represents the beast, the great red dragon. And Satan is the dragon that gives authority to the Antichrist in Revelations 12:3, that is the beast system. And the Antichrist to me, anti anything just means the opposite of it. It means what it's not. So whether you believe the Christ was an actual figure or an archetype, we are to kind of be this Christ consciousness. And anything, we're to embody that. And if we don't embody that, then anything like that's opposite to that is antichrist. So again, in scripture, Jesus overturned the money lender in his father's temple. And that means we've got to remove commerce from our minds, from our temples. Jesus
So
raised Lazarus, the dead fiction, and that means that we are to see that we are not the legal fiction. We're not that dead fictional entity that the system wants us to think that we are. And the same with walking upon the waters. We've got to walk upon the maritime sea. So again, all these symbols and all this language, it says in scripture for those that have eyes to see, but we've not seen it. If that makes sense.
right, so now you've just covered a whole load of
I know. I do
words
apologize.
rapidly going from one to the other, and of course I'd be
Yeah,
aware that members of the audience may be going, "Hang on a minute, I can't keep up with this," because now you know this
yeah,
inside out and back to front. So you talked about the hat. What did you call
yeah.
the what's the name's hat? The pre
Yeah,
the
it's called a mitre. And again, the Vatican cult that is this serpent cult, like as I said, that they're worshipping Babylonian deities. So we
yes.
think when they talk about God or worshipping God, that it's kind of the creator or it's something that's positive. But the hat represents a
So what
character, a
did you
Babylonian deity
you
called
went from
Dagon.
the hat to oh yeah, Dagon. So you went from Dagon to Dragon. How do you? I mean, other than the fact that it sounds similar, how do you move from one word to the other and know that that's actually how it works?
Yeah, so again, you look into the root of the word. So again, we're looking at etymology, we're looking, back to Latin, to Italian, to Greek. So again, and a great tool is if people kind of want to just, simply get into this kind of thing. Etymology online is a tool online where you can put a word into it and it will tell you all the different versions of it depending on where it's coming from. So we can kind of break the roots of those words down to where they would have come from initially. And, again, the Draco. Say, for an example, again, another Babylonian deity that they worship is called the Cybele. So the Cybele actually is related to the cube. Now, the cube is the black cube of Saturn, which is again a theory that we're all in this tesseract of time, and that the black cube was, a tool, an AI tool used by the Anunnaki, which are interdimensional lizard creatures. Now, I might be going off a little bit on a tangent here, but I think some people might know what I'm talking about, if you've
Right.
been into day life and whatnot. Now, whether this is true or not, I'm not saying that it is, but again, these are our myths, these are our ancient stories that have been written on cave walls from a dawn of an age.
Hmm.
And certainly within the legal system, they worship these deities. And we can decode their symbols. And again, the mitre, the fish hat, represents Dagon. That's what it represents in the system. So again, this Cybele is another Babylonian deity, which is actually Isis and linked to Isis herself. And this is where we get is Ra El from. Isis, Ra, Elohim. Elohim means the powerful ones or the sky people. So again, I'm just breaking it down. And when we get to that Cybele is linked to the word cube that comes from the Kubaba or the Kabbalah, if you type Cybele into etymology online, it will break this down for you, and it will show you. So it's kind of not hidden in plain sight. It's always been in plain sight, but again, it is
How
it is for you to kind of research and kind of draw it down, I suppose.
Right. So I was thinking to myself when I read this book. I mean, because he talks about he takes us on this journey
Yeah,
about how words are broken down quite in the same way. So just to
yeah,
put this in very simple layman's terms, you've
yeah,
got certain words, like you said, with spelling. And you
yeah,
say, oh, it's got spell in it, and it's telling you it is casting a spell. It means something different to what you think. And I just kept thinking to myself, well, this is very convenient that it works in English, that you can do all this with all these different words. Does the same words work if they were in Spanish or Italian or Chinese or other languages? And if not,
yeah.
why not? Because if somebody has designed the language, I mean, I just can't imagine that it must have taken thousands of years for people to have decided, do you know what? We're going to deceive people and we're going to hide words within words. And then
Yeah.
even up to date, where words come into common parlance, and so the dictionary has to be updated with new words, and yet there are words hidden in there. And you think, well, who's doing that? Who's actually composing this, and why are people seeing it? Or is it that we are pattern seeking people and we see links that are not actually there, but we are making the assumption that those links are in there because we see the word spell and we go, oh yes, that sounds like a spell because we speak it. And so that works. Whereas if you've got woof, and you go, well, that's the dog noise, but it doesn't mean anything else. And yet, perhaps in a
I
convoluted
bet
way,
it
you could,
does, Richard.
well,
Leave that one with me. Hang on, Wolf.
uh,
I'm going to come back to you on that one. But no, it is a lot to take in, and there are different ways of looking at it. Like some things, like I say, do derive etymologically from a root word, and that's quite factual. You can take that. Now,
mm,
certain things can be wordplay. So take imagination. So magi is in the middle, and then you've got Asian on the end. So Asian means the form of. An I in quantum, because it's a vowel, gets cancelled out. So you're basically saying that imagination is the form or process of magic. So our imaginations create consciousness, because we are the magi, we are the sorcerers, and I say that over at Dark Matters, it's the middle way. But yeah, I mean, take governare, and
take what?
government. Government, sorry, comes from the word, well, governare, the Latin governare, which means to control, and mens, the mind. So, it's a very simple one, but government means literally to control the mind from the Latin. When the jabs were kind of being rolled out, I remember seeing some, again, because if you know what you're looking at and you know how to decode the language, the NHS, the Nazi harm service, as I call them, were sending out letters to people to come in to, get the, the prescribed, what. And on the top of those letters, it said ipsus more. Now, ipsus more in Latin means they die. So again, when we kind of some of them are just quite simple. So say like democracy, demo comes from the Greek common or mob, and crassy means rule. So democracy means mob rule. So it becomes like, give them games and give them bread. Now some might be more kind of fun, but take politics. So you've got poly, which is many, and ticks is a parasite. So politics is many parasites.
Well, I mean,
Okay,
I think many people can agree with that one quite easily because we can see how they behave. Is it
yeah,
is it possible that I mean, even though the word might have these decoded messages in it, if you don't play
yeah,
the game, then you're not using those words in that way, are you? I mean,
Yeah,
let's say the people that use these words and have planted all in this, and they may laugh at us because they put ipsus mori on the top of the thing and say they died. Let's say that all the people that did that snuffed it. Something came down, a golden light came and just killed all the nasty people. But we carried on using these words that had come out, but nobody was
yeah.
understanding the so-called true meaning. We would just be using them as in, say, the Oxford English Dictionary version of it than any other mean and nasty version, wouldn't we?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is as well, if you were constantly thinking like this as well, this expression is kind of what we've got, isn't it? It's a
Hmm.
tool, and I think mainly the awareness of it and the study of it, to kind of, I think the whole system really, kind of is, would fall down really if we all just have awareness of it, of how it works, and I think more and more people are doing that. I mean, take coronavirus. Corona comes from crown. And virus means poison. So coronavirus itself means crown poison, and crown means Kronos. So again, go back to the Cybele, the Isis. She was the
Uh,
consort of Kronos. So again, when you kind of make these links, and again, you can find this stuff when you do the research. It's quite, it's there.
when you say crown,
It's our mythology, I
when
suppose.
you say crown, do you mean crown of the head, or do you mean the king's crown that he's wearing?
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, so then you're getting into phonetics, and that's where the kind of phonetics comes in because you can have one word that has two different meanings, can't you? So it
Hmm.
might sound the same, but they both have different meanings. So which one is it? So yeah, that's a very good example. But the crown is Rome really as well, but Rome worship time and Kronos is time. So
Hang on.
again, the
How do you
crown.
get to I'm going to have to slow down because you're leaping
No,
to
no,
these things.
sorry. Yeah, my
No,
brain can go like
you're
a
doing
quick
it too quick,
travel.
whereas the audience are going, "What? How did you get there?" So I need to slow
Yeah,
you down a bit. So taking that coronavirus, you're saying it's a virus of
yeah.
a crown. Does that mean the
Yeah,
crown of your head? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, because I suppose yeah, of the head because
Of
you,
the
you put
head?
a you would put yeah you
You'd
put a
put a
crown
crown.
on the head, but we also
Then
have
you
the
link that
crown of
to
the head.
Rome. How
Yeah,
did you get to Rome?
right. So yeah, so again, crown. I was saying earlier that you get the Vatican worship the Babylonian deity Cybele.
Hmm.
She is linked to Father Kronos. Now, so again, you go from the word crown to Kronos. Kronos means, Father Kronos, and it stems from the word crown. So each word can link to the next word, if that makes sense.
And yeah. So how do you know that's the right link to make?
Because you study the etymology and the roots of the words. So again, if people want to kind of again, etymology online is a really easy, cool tool to be able to kind of just type it in. And again, it's just a case of studying the roots of where they come from in Latin.
Hmm.
And what it will do is say on etymology online is you can type one of these words in and it'll give you all the roots underneath. So again, I kind of link it because I understand what I suppose like the legal system, how that works and what language they do use and who it is they worship and why. So, like Google Chrome comes from Kronos, which comes from crown. So again, we can kind of link these words in etymologically. Some of them, I know it gets a bit confusing. Some words can be word splitting and some words can be word play. But certainly with the I can't say etymological root of it, those are things that we can kind of prove, I suppose, for want of a
Right.
of
So,
a
so
better
what do you
word,
mean by
really.
word? What do you mean by word play? What do you mean by that?
So say again, like imagination. I would class that, as I explained earlier, I would class that as a word play. A bit like parliament or parlay lies to the mind. Well, there's a lie in parliament, but really you're just taking parliament to talk to the mind.
Mm.
But then we'll say to play with it is there is a lie in it. Does that
But
make
is
sense?
that deliberate? Do you think, or is that just us seeing the pattern?
I think it kind of comes to me when I begin to see the pattern. I think like you touched on something earlier, Richard, and I can't remember the word funnily enough, but where people because we could be accused of seeing patterns in everything, couldn't we? We could kind of say,
Hmm.
and I think it's an actual condition, isn't it? I think it's called something, and I can't. Is it Anna something Pania?
Yeah, no, I know what you
I'm
mean.
not.
I can't, but we
Yeah,
do. I mean, people generally see we're pattern seeking. Our minds are sort of going, and a lot of
yeah,
coincidences might just, we might, and I'm not saying this is true with what you're saying, but
yeah,
there might be things that are coincidences, although some people say there's no such thing as coincidences, which may or may not be true as well. It's such a minefield,
yeah,
this, or mind field. And but some random events could be joined together and dots
yeah,
joined, which do not or never make. Now, let me just give you an example of this, which has just sprung into my mind. There was a play by Harold Pinter called The Caretaker, or rather, there is a play, and I've seen it, and it's an interesting play. I've done some Harold Pinter stuff, and I was going to be in it once, and in the French's, which is the name of the publisher that publishes a lot of plays, they have a sort of a bit by the author. And he said, Harold Pinter said, this is an interesting play because people do it and they often come up to me at the end. There's three main characters. There's an old man, a chap who lives in a house, and his brother. And the old man is the caretaker. The chap who lives in the house owns a house, and his brother is a bit of a tearaway. And people say, yeah, this represents the old man is man, us. The chap who owns there is God, and his brother is supposed to be the devil, and it's an interplay on all of that. And
yeah.
Pinter said it's fascinating because they come up and they all tell me this. Many people tell me this. And he said, but actually, the story as I wrote is a story about an old man, a chap who owns a property, and his brother. And yet, people were seeing stuff in there that was not actually there at all. And so I mention that because it's fascinating, because people often see things in things that just are not there. And I wonder how much of that goes on having read this
Yeah,
book, because whilst I could see some of it, the author
yeah.
was really making me
Going for
especially when it came to words that sounded like other words. And he was saying, oh, because
Wordplay.
it sounds like it, you can use it. And I was thinking,
Yeah.
that's because there's other languages where the same word wouldn't sound the same as another word. So why is English the one that it works with? Perhaps others don't. That's what was just
Yeah.
sort of why I wanted to put that to you.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, it's a good point because we can see things sometimes that, perhaps aren't there. I suppose my study is a study it's called syncretism. And the syncretism is basically us kind of pulling the thread on many different aspects of research and study and mythology and ancient history and perhaps our true history or not. I mean, you decide, like you say, um, uh, truth is very subjective, isn't it? Even in legal terms, that this is why they'll get you to swear on the Bible and say, I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. They've already got you for perjury there, because what is the truth? We can only kind of tell our truth. So a bit like Alice in Wonderland, is it? Was it the rabbit or the Mad Hatter who says, you don't have to be mad to come here, but it helps. So
Yes.
as I always say, don't listen to me. Maybe I've gone a bit mad, but again, what I tend to try and do is pull this proverbial thread, to try and piece it together. Certainly with etymology, that's very trackable. Wordplay, something a little bit different. And what you perhaps have picked up on in that book, and some of the things even that I'm saying, is wordplay over etymology. So, I suppose I'm trying not to confuse people too much, but they say that the language of syncretism is the language of the adept. And Manly P. Hall famously said, when the human race learns the language of symbolism, then a great veil will fall from the minds of men, because symbols and mathematics are kind of the true language, really. They would have been used by our ancestors, thousands of years ago. And that language, especially the English language, like I say, which is phonetically the direct opposite of Hebrew, is pretty new, really, in comparative terms to what our history is. But history, his story, who tells history? generally the victors, isn't it, of certain um yeah, wars or whomever. But but yeah, no, it's definitely a thing. But I suppose take like the Welsh flag. When they will tell you it, we know that there's an inversion in everything, and I suppose my passion and interest is to revert it back or at least shine a light on a different possibility. The language of legalese, as I was saying earlier, because obviously my background for the last 4 years has been exposing the language of the bar society, the bar mitzvah. The bar still are in charge of the city of London today, and they used to be called the Gala. Now, the word Gala was an ancient Sumerian demon that dragged the dead to the underworld. And I know, Richard, you're very aware of the legal fiction, as many of your viewers are now, So again, that's a really cool study, legalese, because we can prove that. We can prove that
Mm.
in Black's Law. We can prove the etymology. Wordplay, maybe you decide a little bit. That's a little bit of a different egg, I suppose.
So how do words? I mean, what you've described is fascinating. I mean, it is fascinating, and you see all these
Yeah,
connections, and you think, "Blimey, I never saw that." Like you just said with his
yeah,
story, and you go, "Oh yeah, history. It is actually somebody's story. Whoever writes it, it's his story. It's not your story or their story or someone else's story." And so that is fascinating. In the language that we're using, then, not only are we casting these spells which go out into the ether and potentially come back to haunt us if they've perhaps are negative, but how do words entrap us? Because we're using a lot of the words, and we know in the legal way of doing things, you're constantly being trapped into a contract with somebody, and
yeah,
yet you discover that actually it can't be a true contract because unless there's transparency, it's null and void anyway. And yet they don't tell you that they have now contracted you or got you in their jurisdiction. So I find all of that fascinating, but at the same time, it you just wonder if you don't know you've been trapped, how do you know you've been trapped? So
yeah, yeah.
how do they trap us, Carly?
Yeah, as I say, if Rome is the beast, then language is its system. And we if we leave aside the ones that maybe are a little bit more tenuous and they're quite fun, and we stick to kind of in legal terms, is it Tom Cruise in A Few Good Men? It's not a matter of what I know. It's only a matter of what I can prove. So again, the study, as I've always said, of the law for me has always been the journey of the spirit. And again, perhaps how I started on my journey was, I mean, I was a trained yoga teacher, and then the lockdown hit, and I knew that must meant may. I knew that was an offer of contract. I knew that much at least. So, you must close your business meant you may close your business. You must wear a mask became you may wear a mask. And quite rightly, Richard, it's about contract. Con comes from to swindle, and tract means general distribution of said swindle. So if I can like say, a really cool example would be marriage, which comes from mer, which mer means sea. So mer is, in livery terms as well, and mer is a horse. So we know with the birth certificate and the legal fiction to the elites or they, them, as we don't want to really give them power, but for ease, a marriage is a contract under the state. Now, the word state in legalese means contract. So, again, a marriage is a bond under the state. And again, it kind of falls under Babylon. So you take the word groom. Well, what do you do to a horse? It's how a horse is cared for. And this is, then you're getting into the symbology. This is why they give horseshoes at weddings. So a relationship. Now, if you were just falling in love, man and woman, and you want to go and record that under the creator, or God actually means God of war to them. So I try and stay away from God. But if you are in a relationship and it's maritime, again, getting back to the Phoenicians and the merchants, then you are in commerce. and that is a contract. An estate is a contract. Now, as you quite rightly said, Richard, contracts need to be open and honest. There needs to be a meeting of the minds, etc., and so on. And it has to have what we call consideration. Now, in legal terms, the consideration in a marriage is the children. And Pete Stone said this very eloquently when I watched Pete on your show. Children means chattel in legally. So that's the product for the state. So what you've got there is a three-way contract where the state is the principal. Now you bring a third party into a true union, not a marriage, but a union, it's nullified under God. And that's why they give rings at weddings, because it represents the rings of Saturn or Satan. So, I mean, and again, people might argue that one with me, but this registration of everything, as we know, Regis meaning of the king, unfortunately, marriages are contractual obligations with the state to deliver in livery terms. And this is why a woman contracts. She contracts at birth and not birth, but berth. Again, we're saying two words can sound similar, birth and birth, but have two completely separate meanings, though phonetically they're the same. So and that's how that system works, and it gets quite dark because husband comes from the German. I think hus means to bind. Oh no, sorry, hus means house in German, and band means to bind. So a husband is a house slave. Wife comes from the Dutch wif, which actually translates then to bitch. So again, and household actually means house of slaves. So and this is this is legal. This is stuff that we
Mm.
can kind of decode from Black's law, but also from the etymology and the root of the words as well, because we know that anything that needs a license is civil, and license in Black's law means a permission to do something that would otherwise be illegal. So the priest then becomes a priest of that Roman civil system, which unfortunately is Baal worship, and Luciferianism and worship of these Babylonian deities like Moloch and so on and so forth. But again, don't believe me. As I say, do your due diligence. I might be talking utter bananas, and some people are going, "What is she?"
But
No.
if we don't if we just say, look, if contract law says that the two parties who are dealing with one another have to be open and transparent. If you're using a different language, or you're using an interpretation of the words we're speaking differently to me, then what you're saying is null and void. Because if we're not using the same dictionary, if I'm using the meanings of words from the Oxford English Dictionary, which I imagine most people do, because they haven't been brought up to Black's law and know all this other stuff, then even though the powers that know this stuff are
Yeah.
sort of pretending, well, we've got you because you're trapped, because you use, we said things like, do you understand, which means, do you stand under me? But if you say,
Yeah.
well, no, actually, you've used the word understand, and because you didn't tell me you're using a Black Law's Dictionary version of it, I naturally assume I've got presumptions too, mate. You might have your 12 presumptions, but I've got my own presumptions that if you're talking to me, a lay person in the street, I will, of course, be using the Oxford English Dictionary, because you purposely used understand to
Yeah.
try and entrap me. And because you've entrapped me, that's not a contract, so it's null and void. So what in a roundabout way of saying, does it really matter that they use all this terminology? Because actually, unless they're telling us what each of those words mean, they don't mean what they think they mean anyway.
Yeah, and you bang on, and to do what it's to do with as well that people tend to kind of miss is jurisdiction. And again, juris means law and diction means words. So we're all being trapped by law words. Now, we know that they're not being open and honest. We know there's not a meeting of the minds, etc. and so on. However, we can call fraud on it, which kind of technically is, but we have an unlimited right to contract. Now, what that means is if we, even in our ignorance, and ignorance is no defense of the law, if we join in with the grammatical deceit on documents, and it's a really interesting point you bit on, Richard, because what there's something called quantum grammar. Quantum grammar. So say like in quantum grammar, president means PRSI when dent is a contract. So president in quantum grammar means a man who says nothing about nothing. And it has a mathematical interface. Now, a lot of these documents that we get, again, it's shipping terms, the document will have different styles of grammar on it. So we know about dog Latin, the Capitus Maximus, the all caps name, which is how they get us into the fake fictional system, and we become a person, which is C person in Black's Law, C corporation, corp meaning dead, orate meaning speak, and the dead can only speak to the dead. So they have to turn us into this legal fiction. And I know you've done quite a few videos with some of the awesome guests. So I won't labour on that one. But if you take a look at a letter or a bill, and most of the time we don't get bills, we just get statements of accounts because a beneficiary and a creditor can discharge a bill. And if you're interested in that, come and see me at Dark Matters plug. But if you take a document like that, what you'll find is there's more than two or more uses of different grammar styles on that document. Now, what that means is even under their own rules, they're not allowed to do that. We know that they're breaking a lot of rules in loads of different ways. But just as an example for people listening, go and have a look at a letter where someone's perhaps demanding some kind of performance from you, contractually, as we know that all governments have incorporated now, etc., and so on. And you will have capital letters on there, you will have numbers. So you've got, it might say 12 Jan. Well, what's 12 Jan? They make the presumption, and we make that document real by, oh, that's 12th of January. That's what that means. But then they'll also have bold letters on there. Things will be in lowercase and bold straight off the bat. They're relying on the grammatical deceit even on that document, and this is how we can break these documents down. Now, if we join in with the same language, then they class it as, well, that's game on. Whereas if we call that language out, there's a good friend of mine called Andy Truman from the Good. It's a Goodism now, and he's a master at quantum grammar and a thing called postal mechanics. And if people want to deep dive this further, there's a guy called oh, his name's gone out of my head now. It'll come back to me online. And again, when we can start to see this grammatical deceit on these documents, then we can start to call them out on it. But again, if we join in, then we're kind of equally liable for that. It's not fraud
But what?
anymore because we,
But
we've
this is
joined
the
in with
point
it.
I want to. But this is the point I want to get to, because I don't quite understand. You see, it seems to me that if something is fraudulent, it's fraudulent. End of.
Yeah,
If they are sending you something that you interpret, despite the fact, because when you go to school, you do know what capitals are. It's not as if we don't know, and you see your name in
yeah,
capitals. You know you know it's your name. That's what you've been taught. So you've been taught to
yeah,
look at a document and go, "That's my name," and the fact that it's in bold, or all these different things.
yeah,
They know that we will interpret this way, that it's about us
yeah,
and it's all of that. If that's the case, then,
yeah.
as you just said, that's fraud. It seems to me that we shouldn't need to be able to, know, oh, this
Yeah,
is in capital and therefore it's not really my name, it's the legal. None of that should really matter, because
yeah,
they, if they are then saying, oh, well, your name was in capital, it's silly you for not realizing that we've conned you, then it's they've used a system that they
yeah,
have presumed that we will know. So again, I keep coming back to that. If they've deceived us, then it's null and void. It does. I don't really get it. I mean, I
yeah,
understand what you're saying, and I can look at it. I mean, I've had letters that come to me, and it will
yeah,
say, and they've misspelt my name. I know it's meant for me, but it's in a window thing, and I just go, well, they
yeah,
misspelt my name. It's not me then, so I've just gone wrong addressee, sent it back, and then after a
yeah.
while, you never hear from them because they just whatever. Um, or they sent
It,
something to the resident, and I go, well, that's not my name. But your
yeah,
normal person on the street would go, well, I'm residing here. And so
yeah,
they'll open it up, and now they'll say, oh, well, you've opened it up, you've contracted. But surely, if
yeah,
the rules are that if you're not if it's not transparent and you don't know that they're using this other system, then it's null and void, and it shouldn't be a thing anyway. So that's where I keep coming back to,
Yeah,
that they're being fraud anyway.
yeah.
So you should be able to say, well, oh, I don't know, I'm losing myself in my own argument now. Do you know what I was trying to get to?
No, 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 I totally understand what you mean. And it's a frustration of mine that I hold to my heart very dearly. And ultimately the system wants your energy. This is about loosh. This is about
Loosh.
this is the loosh is an energy that's kind of, these entities suck from us. Now, if you're stirring it, as I say, the Rubik's cube of the legal system, and it's all cube worship, it's all Saturn, Father Time cubes. This is why the judge wears the Saturnian robes. This is what they're in worship to. They're in worship to Saturn, to Father Time. A tesseract is a cube. But anyway, without going too far off topic, if you're staring into a Rubik's cube, yeah, then you're doing this. What a lot of time it is working out the puzzle of the legal system, isn't it? Now,
Mm.
all that system is, quite right, like you say, Richard, is confidence, faith, and belief. That's what the Baron taught me when I learned commercialized liens back in the day. Is confidence, faith, and belief. We make it real with our minds because you're quite right. The system's just the system. It has presumptions, assumptions, relies on our tacit acquiescence, which is silence, and hearsay. And hearsay is a nonsense. So that's basically the system can just make up any old crap it likes about you. And until you rebut the 12 presumptions of law, as you just kind of briefly got into, then they'll presume that. It's chicanery, and it's a game. People will say about, and this is why I always say it's important that people understand jurisdictions, because in statutory jurisdiction, if you're the legal fiction, then it's do monkey do, monkey, monkey do a poo on you, jump how high, we're in their jurisdiction. So we want to kind of remove ourselves from that jurisdiction and begin to operate as a creditor and beneficiary, and learn that really we're all just in trust law, and it's all securities to them. It's all security and title. Because they don't really want to take your house. They want the piece of paper. It's an energy harvest to them.
And
And
when you say
when we
energy,
can
I've
kind of
heard
get
this a
that
lot.
one.
What does it actually mean by? I mean, are they just want us to sort of wither down and not be able to move by taking away, the energy to stand up? And how do they do that?
Well, again, if you're going to a job, which in Hebrew means persecution, it comes from Job. If you're going to a job, to work, to earn fiat currency, which is fake currency, to pay taxes, which are actually, voluntary anyway, as we know, but and you're earning, and again, an urn is where you put the dead into, in an urn, to give it them all back, that's that hamster wheel of debt slavery that most people find themselves on. And then the little bit that you have left, because we're taxed at, well, it was 85% to each pound, and that's more now. So we're kind of earning this fake currency to give it them back. That is an energy harvest in and of itself, when really, as I say, you could go and get your morning coffee, and we won't name any. I mean, Starbucks, the logo on Starbucks is Isis. It's the image of Isis when you study symbology, but that's another deep dive, how all the
I thought
corporate
were
logos are
going to say
Saturn
we won't
worship.
name any brand, and then you went Starbucks.
Starbucks, but only to say that they worship Isis, and that's what the logo is. But again, that's another deep dive. But
Yeah.
again, if it, because when we're born, and I say born, not birthed, onto the Earth plane, not the planet, because the Vatican turned the plane of the Earth into a vessel in the sea of space via the Unum Sanctum, which was the first express trust deed. But basically, when we're born, and it's always the first trust, we were given the land, the air, and the water. Now, that's what the law is: land, air, water, of which we have dominion, because we are the creator's, children. Well, I shouldn't say children. We are the creator's sons and daughters. And this was given to us in perpetuity for our sons and daughters, sons and daughters, sons and daughters. Now, basically, all the Vatican is the dog star of Sirius, but the Vatican just came along and said, right, this is ours, and you're going to pay us to use it. And that's what's happened ever since. Now, if you go back to our kind of ancient past and history, we would have been slaves. The Jesuit bankers and the merchants of the sea just found a way to do that on paper. So really, we should, and it's even in our constitution. And I know you've had some great guests, Richard, on talking in far more detail than I ever could about the Bill of Rights and our constitution. We have rights. However, no one can confer a right upon another. If we're born as free men and women, and free men and women you are, as Braveheart would say, then we are. I don't like to say entitled, but we can build a shelter. We can live off the land. We can. We don't need somebody coming along taxing us and telling us that we can't. Well, it's a case of hang on a minute, who are you? And it's fear and force, and it's fear and force that's always kept everybody in line, and it's fear and force. These families, and again, you study, where these families have come from, and those bloodlines, they've been doing this for a very long time, for thousands of years, and their gang is bigger than our gang, and that's as simple as it is. And this system that's been created, and I don't believe this has come from the mind of a human, and human in a human in legalese means monster, but really we are hue God. We are the light of the Creator. But this hasn't come from the mind of a man. It's come from something far darker and far more timeless, because it's such an intricate system. And again, if we're just staring at this system, because really, Richard, it's just like Neo in the Matrix. In the end, we just have to go, no.
Well,
All of us just have to say no
exactly. I
to it.
mean, the more I suppose, the more that you realise the system is as intricate and as delicate, and it's interwoven and all of that, and if you just say, "Do you know, I don't want to be part of this," and just say no, as you say, then really and truly, I mean, the whole acts and statutes and all of that nonsense. It's just saying, well, you can pretend that you've got jurisdiction, or you can pretend that I'm some legal fiction. I know that, for example, some people go to quite great length to go to their birth certificate and then sort of make amends and all of that, and go, that's not me anymore, and all of that. But surely you don't even have to do that. You just go, that's just words on a page. I am a nameless spirit inhabiting a physical body of flesh and blood. That's it. That's all I am. And you've got this system, and you think for some reason I'm in it, and you want to convince me of it. Well, I've decided I'm not actually that. I'm just continuing to be an unnamed spirit in a body, and I shall look
Yeah,
out from behind the eyes at all of this sort of movie and just go, what a
yeah,
load of old tosh. All I want to do is sit down and look at the sunrise, have something to eat, and, amuse myself. And when I say amuse myself, don't have other thoughts. So
yeah.
it just seems that we've made it complicated to get out of this complicated system. Surely it's just as easy as turning your back on it, isn't it? Other than the fact that they've got bully boys who will come after you with,
Yeah,
threats and menaces and stuff. But if enough of us just turn around and go, oh,
yeah.
behave. I mean, we take them serious, isn't that? I mean, it's the same with all these people who want all these different genders and the whole woke brigade who in different bathrooms
Yeah.
for all of these sort of things that they talk about. But in the old days, people used to laugh at them and go, "Oh, for goodness' sake, grow up." And can we not do that the same to all these people who got, "Oh, well, jurisdiction, you've got it because you accidentally didn't see it was capital
Yeah,
letters and all of that." And can we not just go, "Oh, for God's sake, just grow up, just live, just enjoy it"?
yeah. No,
What am I
you remind
missing?
me of
I'm
my own
missing
heart.
something there. It's too simplistic, surely.
No, no, because I think that's what the human mind does. We make quite simple things quite complex, and it really is. And again, it's that energy harvest of us all working it out, without kind of going too spiritual. But you can't really have a convo with me and not do, because as I say, the journey of the law is the journey of the spirit, because that's the codes, that's the symbols, that's the language. And like I say, even the Pope holding, his staff, it's got a paedophile symbol on the top. We know because once you've seen the whole thing, you can't unsee it. And again, take statutes and acts, like you say, they're demanding this performance because we're not rebutting it. But statute, look at the definition of statute. It's a dead, lifeless thing. Well, what's an act? Well, it's a good piece of theatre, but that's all that it is. And we make it real with our minds. And I always quote this, Richard, and I might be showing my age here, but if
Mm.
anybody remembers the film Labyrinth with David Bowie, and she, he sets her all these traps and games, and she's running around like a headless chicken. And then she gets out on the other side, and she can't remember the line, can she? That she says to him, and she's going through hardships unknown and dangers untold. I have fought my way beyond the Goblin City to take back the child that was stolen. And in the end, all she has to say is, "You have no power over me." And they keep us wrapped up in these third party narratives, And it's the hijacking of our consciousness, the television, the programming, come and see my channel or your channel the language is it's this magical mystical language, and it goes back to frequency, and it goes back to words again. And I talk a lot with my hands because I'm from Bolton. And again, we've just got to kind of, when we decode it, and we decode the game, it's just an absolute nonsense, really. Like my old tutor used to say, confidence, faith, and belief, and their gang's bigger than our gang. Who is the judge? He's just the janitor at McDonald's when you break it down. But they have got fear and force, and we're also bothered about ownership and our assets and protecting it. And again, if you have got, this is why we utilize trust law and trust titles, and we understand securities. To me, it's about understanding the game and knowing who I am, and that's what we say at Dark Matters: know thyself, remove the shackle of debt slavery, because it's debt slavery that's got us like stuck into this, propelling this like endless nonsense, really. But again, we know in trust law you want to split the legal and equitable title. They teach us that we want to own stuff. But no one can ever own anything. It's a universal maxim: he who creates owns. Well, I didn't create me, even. I didn't create the earth, not the planet, but the earth. And the earth is the heart, so turn that word round. But so we've just kind of forgotten who we are. That's what I say.
Mm.
I'm more powerful than you are. You're a public servant.
Well, listen, my hour is up. I always like to keep these to about an hour. Where can people find out more about what you do, and then they can learn more about the spells and more about the law and the trust law and all of those exciting things that you talk about? I know it's called Dark Matters. Is that darkmatters.com? I'll put the link anyway in the description, of course.
Yeah, you can find me at Dark Matters. It's a new project, so it's www dot, which is 666, but let's not go there. And it's darkmatters.contact. But yeah, Richard puts the links down, and as I say, what we do there is all this esoteric information, and we break all this stuff down. We've got a really nice, I shouldn't say community because that means something else. We've got a great
See, we're
network and a
trapped. We
great
are in trap. We can't
platform.
use these words. I mean, we're using them all the time. And like we
Yeah,
mentioned human, and then you go, oh, well, that's the color of man,
yeah,
or community. That means, or children. And yet,
I know.
at the end of the day, we all use those, but we don't mean what they mean. We
No,
mean what we mean. We mean,
yes.
children. We just think of them as our kids, and not baby goats. We have those mean, and I don't want I where I worry with all this stuff is that we're
Yeah,
effectively just legitimizing their language when we
yeah,
start to break it down and spell it out. That actually our language, they may have invented that word, but it's almost like they can't come back and say, well, can we have our ball back, please? It's come in our garden. No, you kick the ball into our garden. It's now our ball. So surely we can claim that language and say,
yeah,
look, for me, children means my kiddywinks. They run around. Or
yeah.
do we have to, in the end, say, well, we'll make up our own language and sod your language, and we'll have our own, and then they won't know what to say. Oh, flubub. And so when they, you go, oh no, you've got to write to Orshfish Digit and Bing Flubub, and if you get it spelt wrong, that's it. You're out. So they
Yeah,
can't have it both ways. They've either given us a language or we've
yeah.
learnt this language. We have our own meanings from it. If they're trying to fool us, you just say, I'm sorry, that's not what I understand the language to mean. You're just making it up.
I think it's like what we said before. I'm a nerd for this stuff. I love it. If I think the main thing is just awareness of it. We're never going to be able, language is a powerful tool. Words are powerful, and I think it's just getting people to understand and have an awareness of it. You don't have to deep dive it. If you're into it, like I say, time is energy, and that's how that system works. It wants your time. It wants your energy. But again, we it's about us taking our power back, isn't it? That's what it's about. And the fact it's like keep them sick, keep them stupid, keep them unaware. And unfortunately, in that kind of unawareness, if that's even a word, that's they consider it consent to their rituals. Like
Mm.
for example, and I know me, I was up, but I'll slip this last one in.
No, that's all right.
You know, the birthday, that's why they get us to eat birthday cake. because placenta means cake, and we know that they cut the placenta from the newborn baby way before that they should do, and it's the placenta that they're actually kind of registering or registering of the king. They put the foot of the baby on the birth certificate or a drop of the blood to represent the soul or the soul of the foot, and it's just us stopping ignorantly and blindly going along with the occult rituals for me.
But
And if I can
if
create
we
that
don't
awareness,
know, we're not really. I mean, they might go, "Oh, look at them! They're having birthday cake," which means. But if we don't know that, if we don't know that, we're just having, "Oh, it's
yeah,
look, we're celebrating here, and we're going to make you a cake, and yeah, we're calling it birthday cake." And if people go, "Oh my God, that means the placenta. I'm not going to eat that cake." It's like, well, Sodom, we're going to have cake. You can think whatever you damn well like, but at the end of the day, we think what we think. To me, it sounds like the more that one goes into all of this, it seems that they're amazingly petty and amazingly feeling that
yeah,
they need to have these symbols of power to make them power. I don't feel I need any of these symbols to be powerful
no,
or to do anything. I don't feel I need to have certain
yeah,
jurisdiction or contracts or all of this nonsense. I
yeah,
just feel I just need to be me, and I don't
yeah,
need that. So in a way, I feel more powerful than they are because I don't
yeah,
need all these little symbols and trinkets and nonsense
yeah.
to make me feel, oh, look, we're laughing at them because they're so stupid. But are they stupid? Are those people actually stupid? Or are they just saying, do you know what? You're all tossers because you're all worried about that. Oh, they've said birth, or they've said children, oh, we've got them. No, bog off, because we're using our own language, our own way of doing things. I mean, to me,
Yeah.
sometimes I don't know.
No,
I just feel that they're actually less powerful than us, and they're only doing that to make themselves feel. The fact that we go along with it is the
yeah.
stupid thing. The-
That's exactly it, because we are more powerful than they are, even in spiritual terms. That's why they have to have these rituals. That's why they have to torture children and puppies, because they ain't as powerful as us, and that's
and
exactly it.
puppies.
And they've
I'm
just
not
forgot.
having
We've
that.
forgotten. We're not
They're
having
not
that. Not on
torturing
my watch.
puppies.
And again, that's it. That's it for me. I agree with everything you just said, because I'm exactly the same. I love the decode of it, but ultimately, it's just a case of I remembered who I am now. If the work that I do and others before me, like I say, and the work you do just creates that awareness,
Hmm.
then I think that's just the key, really. That's the key to it, because in our ignorance they'll do it, but
Hmm.
when we,
No,
and awake is a part for the dead, but
I do totally agree that actually you have to kind of go through this process of knowing what they're doing to the point that
yeah,
you can go, all right, then I'm now more powerful and I can say sod off because it doesn't actually matter.
yeah,
But you do need to, and I do get that. And on my sort of,
alchemical.
yeah.
Yeah, that led to
So I do,
gold. The lizards, if you believe lizards can be, an archetype of, that's what alchemy is, transmuting lead to gold, matter to spirit, and they worship matter. They want to keep us like that. This has to be real, but
yeah,
actually, that we are these spiritual beings, that we are so powerful, and when we get that awareness, and certainly that collective awareness, and that tips, well, game over, innit?
yeah.
Surprise, as I
And
say,
I think we're heading to game over. I mean, although it seems like everything is grim heading towards us, I think we're heading
yeah.
much closer to game over for them, not for us, and that we
Yeah.
will conquer this. Carly,
Yeah.
it's been absolutely a joy to talk to you and go through all of this and wrestle a bit on some of the points, which is fantastic. I really appreciate it. Dark Matters. What did you say it was? Dot
It's dot contact, and I just slip in
contact.
as well, 'cause it was David Wynne Miller. I knew I'd remember his name. He does the quantum grammar, but yeah, it's darkmatters.contact. And like I say, we do have practical remedy and solutions, and we've got some amazing partners in there who set up trusts and who kind of talk more about the legal fiction. So depending on whatever ever level you're at, don't let the esoteric stuff kind of scare you away from us. That's the fun bit for me.
Yeah.
But that's just maybe for me. But yeah,
It's,
please
no,
come
but
and find me
it's not.
there.
It is. It's interesting to learn all of that, and then work out. As you say, the important thing is working out who you are, and
Yeah. Know
you just
thyself.
go through this. Know thyself exactly.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much for coming on the show. On your Dark Matters, I know you did an interview with me, which was very kind. Thank you so much for
I
that.
did. I should plug that. So Richard's in there. Yeah, Richard kindly agreed to come in Dark Matters, and we've got a YouTube site as well. I'll send Richard all the links. But we've got Mark Steele coming on in there as well the next couple of
Oh,
weeks.
fantastic.
And he's going to be uncensored
Yeah,
in there as well. So that's going to be great. So we do the esoteric podcast, but we do the law series, which you introduced, Richard. But we also have guest spots in there as well. So, David Edelman's going to come on, Darren Diorgi. So there's some amazing stuff coming up in Dark Matters. So it's an
you can't
amazing
miss it.
platform, if I do say so myself.
Yeah,
But
of
yes,
course.
thank you, Richard. Thank you for
No
having me.
problem. Well, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. Do go and check out darkmatters.contact, and I will see you again on another of these wonderful interviews. But in the meantime, from Carly and myself, thanks so much for watching. From us, goodbye.